You're listening to the Dynamic Thinking Project podcast. This is episode 2, and today's topic is the food you're eating is fake. Hey everyone, this is Adam Muselli here. Welcome to the Dynamic Thinking Project podcast. If this is your first time listening, thanks for coming. This podcast is released every Friday, and show notes are found at the website themindtechinstitute.com. It's all one word. Come back often and feel free to add the podcast to your favorite RSS feed or iTunes. You can also follow me on Twitter and Facebook. All links are in the show notes and website. Now, let's get into the show. There is a question you ask yourself when you're hungry or whenever you want to eat, which is simply, what do you want to eat? But the real question that must be asked is, do you know what you're eating? I mean, do you really know what you're eating? Because you may think you do, but you've been lied to for a very long time. Now, this information you're about to know may be hard to digest, but a lot of food you eat is fake. Yes, I mean real fake. At least it depends where you live, because different countries have different food regulations, and some countries are far worse at feeding fake food to its citizens. I'll disclose the worst countries for doing this in a minute, but first, let me give you some examples. Let's take a jar of honey. Honey is one of nature's superfoods. It can prevent cancer and heart disease, along with many other diseases and illnesses. It's a very powerful probiotic, and it boosts your immune system and many other benefits, health benefits. And all of that is true, of course, but only if you're eating real honey. You see, Germany is the world's largest importer of honey, and the world's second largest honey importer is the United States. But the United States tells a whole different story when it comes to this amazing superfood natural product. A study found that over 75% of honey sold in the United States doesn't contain any honey. Well, let's see the FDA what has to say about defining honey and what is honey. According to the FDA, honey has to contain pollen, otherwise it isn't honey. It was discovered that the majority of commercial honey brands on the shelves of American stores contained no pollen at all, and therefore were not actually honey at all. So, if all this honey isn't honey, then what is it? Here's the truth. There are many different, carefully engineered artificial ingredients that are used to replicate real honey, and each producer uses their own unique blend. Most are mainly made up from the infamous high fructose corn syrup, sometimes labeled as maltitol syrup, as well as some sucrose syrup and water. And sometimes some plant extracts and essential oils are added if you buy the expensive brand. So that isn't great news for those who swapped sugar and sweet syrups for honey, especially if you're eating pancake or if you add honey in your tea instead of sugar. Because in reality, it's probably the exact same thing. It's the same maple syrup or whatever syrup that you thought it wasn't healthy and you gave it up. Now, of course, I understand if you are asking, why do American honey producers sell billions of dollars worth of artificial sugars labeled as honey? It's simple economics. Or simply, just follow the money. Real honey is very expensive. Just think about it. The cost to make real honey is very expensive. You see, bees have to visit 2 million flowers to produce just 1 cup of honey. Bees usually traveling 55,000 miles, that's around 89,000 kilometers, in the process just to make 1 cup of honey. And over its entire lifetime, a single bee will produce just half teaspoon of honey. High fructose corn syrup and other similar ingredients are extremely cheap to produce, and some companies can sell fake honey for much, much cheaper to consumers. Some might think, well, we have the law. Yeah, but there are no regulations in America regarding the actual percentage required for honey to be real honey or for real honey content. However, in Europe there are very strict rules about what can be labeled and sold as honey. European regulations that anything to be labeled and sold as honey must contain at least 60% actual honey and cannot contain more than 5% sucrose, which is sugar, or syrup. And in Australia and New Zealand are also good with their honey if it's only from Australia and New Zealand and not imported and has an Australian or New Zealand flag on it or kangaroo that as a symbol of Australia. So you better keep an eye on that if you live in Australia and New Zealand. Make sure you're getting real Australian honey. And for Europeans, most of the honey sold across Europe was found to be 100% honey. So, well done, Europe. How about orange juice? Well, I'm sure you already know that most orange juices are artificial. At least I hope you knew. But do you really know just how artificial? Well, it's very artificial. Or let's say the flavor of most major orange juice brands is 100% fake. You see, to make orange juice isn't just squeeze an orange and throw in some preservatives and added sugar. Big brand orange juices cannot do that. In fact, those companies, they squeeze oranges, then remove all the oxygen from the extracted juice. This allows the juice to keep for a year without spoiling. A long life shelf product. So, yes, your morning juice is way old and very far from being fresh. Let's say anywhere from few months to maybe a year old. But that's not all that removing oxygen does. It also removes all the natural flavor, and I mean all of it. So you're left with a very old, completely tasteless liquid that slightly resembles something that came out of an orange once. The orange flavor is then artificially re-added to the juice using a blend of artificial flavorings. But why remove all the flavor then put it in again if it's only makes it worse? And of course, that's not easy or cheap to do. Well, it's all about consistency. Each big brand of orange juice has their own unique flavor, and customers are very familiar with that flavor. Imagine if the taste of your favorite orange juice brand changed slightly. Can you imagine the reaction of millions of people when they notice that? Of course, probably they will lose business too. So keep in mind that the natural flavor from the real actual oranges is just not consistent enough to stick a brand name on it and have people to associate that flavor with that particular brand. Because the flavor would constantly change. Of course, depending on the soil, the water, the location of the oranges, and the time of the year. Orange juice manufacturers spend millions of dollars hiring flavor and fragrance experts. The very same people that work for large perfume companies to create a unique and recognizable orange juice like flavor just for their product. The worst part is that flavorings don't even have to be listed under the ingredients because they derive from orange oils, which is a questionable claim, but it technically means these artificially flavored drinks can be sold as 100% orange juice. Now, how about a simple steak? Just a single cut of beef, right? What could possibly be suspicious about that? It's a cow. Well, if you go for cheaper steaks, whether from the supermarket or even your local butcher, you could be eating tens of different of cows in a one single steak. That means you're technically purchasing Frankenstein steaks that have actually been glued together from a whole collection of offcuts. And this doesn't just happen with beef. It could be lamb, pork, chickens, or any meat products. When many animal products are being turned into various types of small food products for fast cooking at home, a lot of waste is created and general chunks of meat that would most likely get thrown away. Some dishonest companies and butchers use a meat glue called transglutaminase that well known with the food industry and completely untraceable within the final product. They basically glue together the leftover pieces, which could have come from many different cows, to create a Frankenstein steak. Just for you. Transglutaminase, which is that glue, is so good at fusing meat together, it would take an expert to examine a steak closely to detect if the meat has been tampered with. And here's the scary part. It's not a legal requirement to list it as an ingredient. Also, I came across a recent study was conducted by the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation examining chicken items from several different top most well-known fast food chains in the world. But of course the study was in Canada. So those big corporations in Canada, they are well known internationally, but I'm not going to mention any names here. I'm not going to do any marketing for any unhealthy food. And of course, after such study, lots of surprises were found. However, the one that stood out the most came from a fast food chain corporation that claims to be the healthiest. And maybe you already know which corporation that I'm talking about. The study found that the chicken they put in their sandwiches might not contain much meat in it at all. And they found that the supposed to be chicken they use in the sandwiches contain only about 50% from the chicken DNA. Now, here's a question. What is in the other 50% which is not chicken then? What do you think they put in it? If there is only 50% chicken in what's supposed to be a chicken sandwich, what's the other 50%? What ingredients in the other 50% then? So, just to be safe, stay away from cheap steaks and fast food meats, or maybe meat in general. The fake food you consume in the average day is sickening, really sickening. As a matter of fact, I have published over 300 pages book regarding what is happening behind closed doors concerning your health. Grab a copy and read it. You can find it on Amazon and you can find it on the Mindtech Institute website. The book is called The Day We Gave Up Health. So far, it's been a mission to go through and digest all this information. Well, here's another fact for you. 2.3 billion cups of coffee are drank around the world every single day. And you're probably guessing, coffee? Coffee is coffee, right? It's the same ground coffee or instant coffee. Just put hot water, then maybe milk or cream and perhaps some sugar. Yes, you're right, that coffee. But don't forget to add the wheat, the soybeans, seeds, corn twigs, and dirt. Yes, you heard me right. Your ground coffee that's supposed to be just coffee and nothing else, sure, but it actually contains a whole range of fillers, and more often than not, these fillers contain twigs and dirt. Well, it's ground coffee after all. I wonder if that coffee industry took the ground coffee literally. So they had to include twigs and dirt in it because it's from the ground. Well, you see, coffee is very picky about where it's grown. The plant will only produce coffee seeds, known to all of us as coffee beans, in humid and very high mountainous areas. According to several experts, climate change is threatening these sensitive environments, and forecast shows that by 2050, half of the regions in the world where coffee can be grown will be lost, and by 2080, coffee could go extinct. So, yeah, in sci-fi movies, especially those post-apocalyptic movies, they show that coffee are very rare in the future. Therefore, due to growing fees, some dishonest ground coffee manufacturers have resorted to filling out their coffee using fillers such as soybeans and acai seeds, brown sugar, barley, and of course, corn. Some byproduct of coffee production that should be removed from the final product are also purposely being left in to fill it out, such as wood, twigs, parchment, husks, and even soil. You see the similarities? Ground coffee and soil. So maybe they're using it as a loophole. But if you buy whole beans coffee, then don't worry, because there will not be any fillers in there. Brazilian scientists were so concerned about this that they developed a brand new technique using liquid chromatography and statistical analysis that allowed them to detect exactly what percentage of bag of brown coffee is actually coffee. The producer is 95% accurate. What they discovered was that some brands of ground coffee have such high percentage of fillers in them that they must be purposely added in. There is no way it's an accident. There are lots of disappointments about food, and the deception keeps going on and on. Even your olive oil is actually peanut oil, soybean oil, and palm oil. Your cheese and even bread contains wood pulp. Yes, wood pulp, which the FDA says it's safe to eat. Well, as always, FDA, thanks for the lousy job you always do, and especially for this specific advice, because last time I checked, I wasn't a mouse, and I don't like wood pulps. Even your dried spices contain a large amount of garden weeds. Your tea contains sawdust and sand. Blueberries are often faked. Most products containing blueberries, such as muffins, cereals, and pancakes, contain 100% zero blueberries. That means no blueberries at all. Real blueberries are expensive, and yes, you guessed it. Food scientists have perfected a recipe of sugar, purple dye, and other questionable ingredients to give us the miracle of blueberries and, of course, with no health benefits whatsoever. Of course, all these changes and counterfeit of nature faked food, depending on where you live in the world, and every country has its own unique food regulations and different levels of food quality. And here are countries that have the most fake foods and the ones have the least. British charity Oxfam conducted a study comparing the quality of food in every country in the world. The best countries in the world overall for food quality and lack of food-related health issues were found to be the Netherlands, France, Switzerland, Denmark, and Sweden. But shockingly, at the other end of the list was America. For quality and health issues that the USA ranked 120th out of 125 countries, putting it in the same group as Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Ethiopia, and Chad. Such an irony. A sad one, to be honest. The world's wealthiest superpower has some of the lowest quality food in the world. But that is not the fault of the American peoples. Large American food companies that manipulated the market, using every dirty trick in the book and some horrifying techniques and chemicals to make terribly poor quality food seems more appealing to consumers. And in America and some other countries, the regulations just aren't set properly to regulate what goes into people's food. At least, they are nowhere near strict enough. Just remember, every time you go food shopping, you are actually voting as which of those companies are staying in business and which ones should leave. Because if we're the people, start avoiding cheap, processed, and dodgy-looking produce, we'll reduce the demand for it, and that will lead them to either fix their ingredients or go out of business. It is recommended instead to shop at local stores with real high-quality food, and that will make a difference. And, of course, you will live longer, happier, and healthier. After all, it's your health, and for the sake of a bit less convenience, you wouldn't eat garbage out of the bin. So, don't settle for buying it off the shelves, or at least don't get deceived as garbage for food. So, don't forget, secure a copy of my book, The Day We Gave Up Health, and share the knowledge if you care. That's it for today. Thank you for listening. This podcast is released every Friday. Questions? Email me. The email is on our website, www.themindtechinstitute.com. Until next time, take care and enjoy your weekend. This is Adam Musalli, signing out.